So Americans don't trust the media. This is not new news to some of you, but I want to address the issue because I think a lot of people are laying the blame on Donald Trump, and they're saying that he's the one who perpetuated this erosion of press confidence. And I have to tell you, I think he's just an easy scapegoat because the problem has gone on for so long. It runs so much deeper than Trump, and I want to dive into some of this, okay? I want to go into the fact that journalists need to do some self-reflecting. I've been looking at this issue of media and bias for more than 15 years. I've written papers on it. I've written a book called Fault Line on this issue. And the reality is that Americans' trust in these institutions has long been rocky. This is nothing new. Okay, this is not a new problem. Even if you think that somehow Trump suddenly jumped in and suddenly convinced everybody that the media are all fake news, you have to ask yourself, why was that so easy to do? Why was that such an easy move for him to make? The answer to that question is because the media have a history of ignoring, of misrepresenting certain groups of people, conservatives and Christians mainly. And this problem is only intensified. You've got 46% of the country, okay, just 46% saying that they trust the media. And then you had that endless slugfest between the press and Trump. It just went on and on and on, and that didn't help any of this. I mean, the media, they tend to cover conservatives and Christians as though they're people from another world, from another land. And I think a lot of that boils down to the fact that there are cultural differences. Just 8% of journalists report going to church every week. And this came from a poll a few years back. But at that time, 40% of Americans were going to church every week. And so you see that disconnect. And that disconnect manifests itself in biases in the coverage. And those biases create a distrust. Another statistic that is fascinating is that 56% of Americans apparently believe that journalists are intentionally misleading people by saying false things, by perpetuating gross exaggerations, and when I think of that, for me, I'm like, listen, I think most of the bias is accidental. I don't think it's as maniacal as we think. It has to do with those cultural differences, and they work their way into storytelling. Now, we can debate that, though. We can debate all of that. It doesn't matter because at the end of the day, fixing this problem is on journalists. They need to assess their coverage. They need to assess their understanding of Christians and conservatives, and they need to do a better job at their coverage. We are living in a time when we desperately need journalists to report facts, to inform us about what is going on, and yet there's no trust. You've got COVID, you've got national disasters, natural disasters, you've got cultural crises, and all these things are going on, these major hurdles. And I think to myself, how can the media be functional when the public, the majority of the public, sees the media as lying? And then you have the Christians and the conservatives. They feel misrepresented, dismissed, taken out of context, and you have decades of this. It has just been like a snowball going down a hill. So what's the path forward? If I'm to speak to journalists directly, I'm going to say, figure out who these 80 million people are who voted for Trump. Who are the churchgoers? Who are the Christians? What are these people? What are they? Who are they? What do they believe? These are people who are not well represented in many newsrooms. So you've got to take those steps, journalists, to understand who they are, to not come to lazy conclusions, and to really solidify your cultural understanding. If you don't do that, the trust is going to further erode. So I would say, put the olive branch out there. Have some humility, a dollop of self-awareness. And my question at the end of the day, really, to journalists directly is, are you up for the task? Because we need trust in media. We need to be able to get information, and we need people to be able to trust that information and where it's coming from. That falls on you.